and the date is, we can never get the date right, what's the date?
The 26th?
The 26th of July, 2009. We're at the Exopolitics Summit in Barcelona, Spain, and it's our huge privilege, personally, I must say, I want to ask Kerry in a moment to add to my introduction here. We're going to introduce to you Alfred Webre, who's never appeared on camera with us before. Alfred, it's a privilege to be talking to you.
Thank you.
You've been an admirer of yours for many years.
Oh.
Bob Dean, who has become a very close personal friend over the last couple of years, and who blames us entirely for his newfound popularity among all the young ladies in the world who are following ufology.
Shame on you.
It's not that.
It's either you or Sean Connery, and he's just not available anymore.
Right, absolutely.
And all kidding notwithstanding, we want to introduce somebody who we have presented to the world over the last 3 years, somebody who we also know and love dearly. He's become a personal friend for even longer than Bob has, and we called him Henry Deacon, which seemed like a good idea at the time. And I can't even start to call him his real name because I can't even remember it, because for me he's forever Henry. And Henry, it is entirely up to you whether you want to reveal your name again.
I'll just say my name's Arthur.
His name's Arthur.
Hi.
Okay. Do you want to be, and this is a serious question, do you want to be known as Arthur or Arthur?
Yeah, just Arthur. Oh, thank you. I'm tired of the Henry thing.
You're tired of that? Okay. Henry is dead, long live Arthur. So,
In Camelot.
and Camelot, exactly.
That's right.
It's got something to do with the king.
See, he stole your name. There you go. In this life.
So, I'm taking up valuable time here because we're under some limited time, because Bob's in demand, as I just said, and he's got to rush off to his next appointment. And one of the reasons why this is an important conversation is because yesterday afternoon at the Exopolitics Summit, when Bob Dean was giving what I have put on our website and described as the most magnificent presentation at any UFO conference that I have ever heard, and I'll say this again on the record, it's fabulous, and we will link to that here. Mm-hmm. He was affirming the reality of bases on the Moon and Mars, and showing us photographs that have never been shown before, at least as far as I'm aware. And it's extremely important testimony, and in a minute Bob will tell people, I'm quite sure, how he feels that now he is under orders from someone, somewhere, to speak out like he hasn't spoken out before, and we salute you for that. This is a very brave thing that you're doing. It's incredibly important. And one of the things that links the three witnesses that we have here, that we can call you witnesses, is something that we could dub the Martian connection. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Kerry, because I'm talking too much already. Kerry.
Okay, well, just hold on 1 second. Let's
Just
let
something really
Arthur-
simple before it slips my mind. I was just sitting in the audience during the conference, and Herman was next to me, and something popped on the news that was on C-SPAN that I sent you, and I just wanted to remind about that. Was one of the astronauts was talking about this too.
Buzz Aldrin was talking about having
a monolith on one of the moons
monolith
of Mars,
on the moon.
and that just popped up in the last couple of 3 days.
on the moon.
No,
on Phobos.
On Phobos.
On Phobos. Oh, a moon, on the moon of Mars.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Anyway.
And you knew that, right?
Well, no, I wasn't aware of that. No.
You weren't?
I didn't.
No. But you told us about a monolith at one point.
Yes, I have.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a different monolith. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was hoping that you'd have a chance to see Arthur Clarke several years ago.
Oh,
but
we wish.
That just didn't work.
It didn't work out.
Actually, it's interesting you mention him because we just talked to another whistleblower this morning, and he knew Arthur Clarke also. So the two of you have something else in common. Okay, so here we are. I'm Carrie Cassidy. This is Bill Ryan. We're Project Camelot, for those of you that don't know. And this is going to be just an open conversation. And what we want to do is talk about the future, because what this really is what we call a future talk. It is a conversation. That means Bill and I are going to do something really annoying, and we're going to talk from time to time, more than normal. And but we really want to hear from you guys. And what we'd like to talk about is your visions of what's coming in the future, in the fairly near future, ideally, but you can go as far out as you like. And why don't we start with Alfred Webre?
Oh, thank you. Well, I see the future as being shaped by
two fundamental forces, perhaps three. One, a series of cosmic cycles which are synchronistically happening at the same time during solar cycle 24, which is 2009 to 2020, with the solar maximum being around 2013, 2012 to 2013. The time acceleration matrix, which is an adaptation of the Mayan calendar, so that as we move into 2011, the black hole at the center of the galaxy, which really mediates a lot of our thoughts, will be slipping over into universal consciousness, non-dualism. And finally, what some people call galactic genetic engineering, and that is the power of the black hole at the center of the galaxy really to begin to activate our DNA, 97% of which I understand is not active now. It's kind of, they call it junk.
They call it junk, but it isn't junk.
Right, exactly. So these are all sort of raising the capacity of not only the human beings, but of all living things to a new frequency, a new understanding, a new kind of social contract, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, and I think, Arthur, you could maybe talk to that because you might have a different. I don't know if you call yourself a physicist officially.
No.
But you certainly have some expertise in that area.
Well, I don't have expertise, but in some of what he just said. But you took some of the words out of my mouth, so you already said what I would have said about all these. Well, as David Wilcock's talking, he's making a movie called Convergence, and this is what's happening. It's all these various things are all just converging. I was looking at a little child yesterday, a little girl, and seeing her eyes, and I could see the difference, of those generations. You can see it even in someone maybe 20 years old, that they're already very advanced, and consciously advanced.
Arthur, when we met you for the first time, which was almost 3 years ago, I remember very, very clearly this is one of the first things that you told us. You said the big issue right now is that everything is happening at once,
Yes.
or just about to.
Yeah.
Can you delineate, can you list what are those factors that are happening at once?
Well,
Just so people know what
there
we're
are
talking about.
physical factors already just mentioned. The cyclic factors, very long cycles and short cycles. The effect of the star, the sun here. The changes in the spectral changes of the sun, and things that I guess can't be measured. I don't know. For me, it's an intuitive type of feeling, and not a scientific thing. I'm not sure.
But there are things that you have been briefed
Well, you've
on.
always talked about the environment. You've talked about what was planned in terms of viruses that were planted around the world, sort of like time bombs almost.
Well,
And you also talked about a rollout that would affect our economy, et cetera, et
well,
cetera.
these are different from the changes. Okay, I mentioned novelty theory, which Terence McKenna, who's deceased now, who lived in the Big Island of Hawaii, I believe. He talked about, he had a calculation for it, and that mathematical equation can be found on the internet, I guess, and you can see that it comes down to zero at 2012 approximately, from what I remember.
And
So-
that means what? That novelty goes down to zero?
Well, novelty. Well, it becomes more novel, in my opinion. I mean, it's,
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
to me, it means more novel. Well, novel to me means, I would laugh, about it, but it's not. I don't have the words. I don't have the ability
Okay,
to put
for
things
me-
into words that some of these gentlemen do.
Let me
Convey
interpret.
things in words. Yeah.
Let me interpret this for you, and then you can check my reflection. I read a book called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler
Long time.
many years ago, who said that the rate of change is accelerating.
Oh, yeah.
And so you've got a logarithmic change scale such that everything is starting to change.
Exactly.
And it's like there are statistics which I can't quote offhand, but it's like 99% of all the innovations in human history have happened in the last year, or something like that.
As
and
of
the whole
about,
thing is going vertical.
As of about, my feeling is as of about 2 months ago, just because there's no direct marker, but maybe 2 months ago, when I started weaning myself off of morphine for 4 years.
Because you're on morphine because
of
just for the record.
I don't know how to say it. They couldn't come up with it. They didn't. No lab tests were conclusive. So it was by exclusion. They said it was just peripheral neuropathy and exhaustion. But that all happened suddenly when I left my last classified work. It just coincided with that. What it means, nobody knows. There's some guessing.
Isn't that an interesting coincidence?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, what a coincidence.
But when I
And then you were
when I
basically
said
recluse for
goodbye
5
suddenly
years.
and ran away, instead of them controlling me, and then I had this shocks into my system. But the thing is about 2 months ago, something in my subconscious, I'd just been waiting patiently, basically in bed in this room for 3 or 4 years, in severe pain, screaming in pain every day almost. And Bill's experienced pushing me around in a wheelchair one time, but I thought just be patient, and using the mind, I got through that. And then 2 months ago, something told me, you have to stop this. No one else is going to wean you off of this medicine. And so I had this, made a spreadsheet out, and every hour of the day that I was taking it, because I lost track of how much I was taking, it was like 180 milligrams of morphine probably a day. And it was out of control. And so something said, you need to wean yourself off now. And I don't wish that on anyone, to do that. But I got off slowly, and approximately 2 days before all of a sudden the Zurich conference happened, which was a week or so ago, I had just weaned myself off, and I didn't even know about going to the conference or anything. It happened. So the timing is such, it's a message to me that, now's the time when everything starts to really move quickly.
I have to say, actually, 2 months ago, I would agree with you that there seemed to be a transition that happened. There's nothing marked in terms of in the news, but there was a sense that things started escalating, almost like rolling downhill quicker. That was the sense I got, and it's interesting that you say that, and you did. You sort of came awake and started on this sort of move that has put you on stage twice now.
But something's happened to where something that was incurable, just all of a sudden, I'm coming back to normal.
Now, from the point of view of the time acceleration matrix, that would have been the 6th day of the galactic era. And in this particular window, which goes from November 08 to November 09, there are many sort of breakthroughs. So if we're all feeling that general breakthrough feeling in our individual lives, that may be coming from the programming put out by the electromagnetic emanations from the black hole at the center of the galaxy that the Mayans called Unab-Kum, which is the center of all things. I see one, and to ask in particular Bob, Dean, and Arthur, because they've dealt so much with the area of secrecy. I find myself as one who did not come up in the culture of secrecy, but see secrecy as one of the most powerful forces between the open culture and this breakaway civilization that is the secret civilization. And I found one of the most consciousness-raising aspects to me is to hear of secrets, like the teleportation corridors to Mars,
That's
like
right.
the forward positions on Mars, the stargates to Australia, and to just begin to see all of these secret programs, really consciousness expanding.
Well, exactly. Information, I mean, the information itself, just to hear it, like what happened for these people yesterday on stage when you were showing photographs that were really revolutionary because they've been hidden for so long, and then to have a person who actually would get up on stage and say, I've been to Mars and here I am a human. And that was, I think, mind expanding for the audience in ways that we won't be able to even trace.
Is it historical moment?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and obviously, I don't even know if it'll go out around the world other than because Camelot will do our bit, right? But this is the kind of thing that changes consciousness. And one of the things I have to say is that consciousness changes drastically all of a sudden. It's not like a slow, gradual. It goes along, and then from what I understand, change actually happens like that.
Well, even greater than, faster than logarithmic is my feeling.
You get step changing.
Well, I don't know if it's step changes or not. I don't know if it's like that, but digitized or not.
So, Bob, what would you say? Because you have kind of a little more pragmatic view. Correct me if I'm wrong. Along with the spiritual insight. But I think you're seeing these changes, or you know of things that are coming down the pipe that are very pragmatic for people's lives.
Well, I found secrecy actually to be corrosive to the human soul. And that's one of the reasons I have been speaking out so bluntly and so loudly for the last few years. I noticed among the masses of people that I've confronted in conferences here and there, an overriding sense of fear. And the secrecy had been taking its toll on those people. And they were fearful, and they didn't believe they had a future. They began to think there was no future, that we're all doomed. And one of the reasons I came to this conference, and I gave it a lot of thought before I accepted the invitation, because I don't like traveling anymore. I really don't like flying in airplanes anymore. And I came here to, I think, alleviate in one small way the secrecy that I had observed was corrosive to the human soul. And I wanted to tell the people, and this audience in particular, to meet some people like Alfred here, who is a man I've respected and admired for years. There is hope. In spite of all of the darkness, in spite of all of the fear, I would like to say to the people who are interested in listening that there is a tomorrow, there is a future, and they and their children and their grandchildren and so on, the generations yet to come, do indeed have a future, and it's glorious. And they've got to hold on to that spark of belief. They've got to hold on to that hope. And it's why I quoted Tolstoy yesterday when I was speaking, when he mentioned that there is something within the human spirit that will prevail and endure. There's a spark that's burning in the human heart that will not go out no matter how dark the world ever becomes. And I have tried in my small way to convey that to the people. And I was so gratified at the response that I got. They've come up to me literally by the hundreds. I mean, I say this in no negative intent, but they haven't let me alone. The idea that I've said something hopeful and tell them that they do have a tomorrow, they have a future, that their children and grandchildren will go to the stars. That is the one thing that they need to hold on to. There is a future, there is a destiny for the human race in the stars. And that's why I'm here, that's why I came, to add my small 2 or 3 cents to this whole thing.
Well, I would also say that another thing that you tell them is that they have a right to know.
Oh, God, they do indeed.
And I think that just gets a fire burning inside them.
Well, I've been furious. The fire burning inside of me has erupted several times. and it's dangerous. My very nature, back when I was an infantryman for years and years and years, I was not a gentle man. You pushed my buttons, pushed me just a little too far. I had the tendency to become somewhat explosive, and need I say, I had a tendency to be a little bit dangerous. And it's one of the reasons why the black ops people have left me alone. Because I put the word out after, I had been followed in black sedans for a long time at night.
Yeah.
I had the midnight phone calls. I had the black helicopter over my house. And I put out the word that I was a veteran of 2 wars. I suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I could not be trusted emotionally. And if you pushed me a little too far, I was an expert marksman, and I carried a gun. Beware, and mess with me, I might end up shooting a bunch of you guys. And the black limousine stopped following me. The black helicopters disappeared, and the midnight phone calls stopped. So the word evidently got out that don't push this old bastard because he can be dangerous, you see.
Except that you also had white hats behind you.
Oh, listen, let me tell you, honey, I have a lot of good friends in high places. And I admitted at this conference things I've never admitted publicly before. I do indeed have good friends in high places. And I say that with a little bit of tongue in cheek, because these high places,
They go up and up and up.
they go out and out and out, yeah.
For the conference, since for the last few weeks, they're the ones, whatever they are, the invisible part of the whole thing is, whatever it is
Yeah.
very powerful, and everyone feels it in the conference. In the conferences, they're all expressing the same feelings. I think, at least 98%.
Arthur, the human race is a work in progress.
Yeah.
And who has been running this experiment?
Who's been running? Yeah, yes, well, but they've given us the freedom, too, at the same time.
Oh, well,
Yes.
we're an adolescent species.
Yes.
We haven't quite graduated yet.
We just need to learn to work as a family instead of fighting each other.
We are not quite adults yet.
Yeah.
We are troublesome adolescents, almost on the edge of being adults. But we're going to make it.
Now, just to pick up this thread here of secrets and of the deconstruction and making public of secrets, yesterday here at the summit, the high point of the summit was when, after Bob spoke and revealed a number of fundamental secrets, Arthur came on the stage spontaneously and also revealed a number of secrets.
Not much.
And
That's
no, but I mean,
Enough.
in context, it was a revelation that our solar system is inhabited and that Earth is part of the functioning social system. And that was the high point of this conference. Literally, the consciousness of the conference
Complete
was
change.
raised.
Yes, a complete
Yes,
change.
and that was acknowledged by people. People acknowledged that. I
Yeah.
think just as you were coming in,
Yeah.
it was acknowledged. So if we take this, ending the secrecy, I think is going to be an important function of the consciousness raising. And having Henry and Bob come forth in settings like this to reveal secrets which they've lived with for so many years is like a baptism to the people and an empowerment,
Yes.
because secrets are disempowering.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. If Bob was a key soul for me, because I spoke to Bob privately just momentarily because he's been very busy with all these other people wanting to talk with him. And we have some common connections throughout time in different places we've worked, in Belgium and such, and other places. And we're both have an Army background, enlisted, but just different places at different times. But you're like, it was a confirmation to me, you know. I finally met someone that, you know, could kind of reinforce my background, and before I felt alone, you know.
There. You're in good hands. You're in good hands. This experience for me has been, and I say this not with any animosity, but this experience has been for me unlike a Catholic going to confession. You know, they say that confession is good for your soul. Well, speaking bluntly on secrecy and some things that have been covered up for so long, I felt a overwhelming wave of relief to have finally gone public on a couple of things that I have found to be factual and true. And one of them is that deep underground facility outside of Las Vegas, where this Air Force colonel friend of mine went through one door in Nevada, and in 2 minutes he was in Pine Gap, Australia. Now that kind of secrecy, that technology that allows that to happen, stuns people. Do you mean that we've done that? We've got that? We can do things like that? What have they been keeping from us?
I think...
I don't flashing credentials, or it's not a credential. It's inside this passport that I stole from my job. There just happens to be a what do you call it here?
Stamp?
It's so simple.
Can you show it to the camera?
Well, it's a stamp in here that it says, the bearer is a member of the civilian component as defined by Article 1 of the agreement between Australia and the United States Forces in Australia, signed at Canberra on May 9th, 1963. It's just one of the visas, you know, in this passport. This one's for Japan.
Could you show just the front of the passport to the camera? It's a brown-coloured official passport. It's not a normal passport.
Anyway, that's my picture.
Yeah, and we do want to say for the camera that we've actually been to, I can't say we went inside, but to the outside of this person's place of work, one of them. I'm not going to say where on the globe it was or anything else, so don't worry, Arthur. But I will say that we have gotten substantial verification that Arthur is who he says he is.
I would say total verification.
Yeah,
I tried whatever I could.
Yeah, and it was quite extraordinary.
Actually, I encouraged them, wherever this place was at one point that we traveled, I encouraged them to come and meet the security people who I knew by first name, and they were kind of reluctant to do that.
That was when we were a little more nervous than we are now. Yeah. What we did do, just for the record, it was quite fun. We accompanied Arthur into a bar where the local employees in this establishment would go in the evenings, and we just sat in a corner and watched all his old colleagues welcome him and say, "Hey, we haven't seen you for a while."
Right.
And that was quite fun to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'm a little concerned here, Bob, that you were interrupted just now because you were telling the story about two things that you felt gave you a great sense of relief when you disclosed them yesterday. One of them was the reality of the Stargate, the portal, the wormhole, the jump room network, so that you could one moment be in Area 51 and next moment in Pine Gap, and that prompted Arthur to show his Australian visa was it a visa?
Yeah, it's a visa.
More than that.
And the second, Bob, please continue, because I want to.
Well, it's a matter of interest to me, and it always has been, that one of the largest national security agency facilities in the world is at Pine Gap. But what most people have no understanding of is that underground at Pine Gap is one of the largest extraterrestrial facilities on the planet. Our remote viewers have been looking in on that place for years and years and years. And what I found terribly amusing, not that there's that much humor in this whole damn thing, but that facility in Australia at Pine Gap apparently is an extraterrestrial R&R center. And people say, what do you mean R&R? And it's a military term meaning rest and relaxation.
Rest and relaxation.
And I thought, how obvious, it makes sense. Aliens here having to deal with the human race, they need rest and relaxation.
They need some.
You know, I deal with the human race, and I need rest and relaxation, which is I'm going to get when I go home tomorrow, you see. But I found it amusing, out of all of the 4 major facilities on the planet, the one in Australia is an R&R center for the guys from out there.
Arthur, have you been there? Or would you rather not? Would you rather fix me with a steely eye and not answer questions?
Well, let's talk about something else.
Well, let me say that you were nodding. So
I would like to say,
that was
I'd like to say something just simple. Where's my notes? Oh, that may be slightly off course here, but a couple of things. One is we're talking about secrets and stuff. A lot of stuff gets classified secret or whatever just because you've got a stamp there and you have to do something with it. You know, it's not.
They've gone wild.
Yeah, you just stamp everything.
They've gone
and
mad.
it gets filed away, and then it has to get declassified. You know, it's just routine. Stamp
And
every
that's an
day.
interesting-
The Navy keeps secrets from the Army. The Army keeps secrets
Yes.
from the Air Force.
Yeah.
FBI keeps secrets from the
They don't trust
CIA,
each other. They don't
and that
trust
all
each other.
led to 9/11.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where the secrecy leads, to disasters like that.
Yeah, they don't. And the thing is someone needs to be an interface between all these different groups and try and help them to communicate with each other while respecting their own boundaries. So.
And are you willing to agree with me that you were one of those people
Yes,
that kind of
yeah.
crossed some of those
Yes,
lines
yeah.
between
I had
various
to-
agencies?
Yes. So my customers were the whole spectrum.
Which is why you
Yeah.
kind of have the level of knowledge about the overall big picture,
That's
as we
why
call
I'm a
it.
big picture person and always a general person and not focused in one area. And I didn't ask for it, believe me, it just happens. You know, you just get a phone call and you're just, nothing happening. All of a sudden a phone call and would you like a job? Yes. Okay. What is it? Well, you just have to be patient and find out. That's that kind of thing. The other thing is people, at some levels, people are saying that the governments, like the presidents or whatever, or the leaders of the country, should release these secrets. But they haven't had access to this information. They get the tours of certain things, but it's very limited, and they get to see blinking lights or whatever, like, you know, and that's as far as it goes, as far as I've ever been aware.
Arthur, the incident involving President Carter some years ago, where the President of the United States was told by the Director of Central Intelligence, Mr. President, you don't have a high enough security classification for us to tell you all this information. And sir, you don't have a need to know. Now, who was the Director of Central Intelligence at that moment? George Herbert Walker Bush, who became president. That's how damn bad it's become over the years. That's how corrosive secrecy can be, not merely to the human soul, but to the constitutional system of government. It's corrosive as hell, and it's got to stop, and I know you agree with me.
Yes, the fear thing's got to stop, and we need to alleviate the fear for people. Because all of these things, most of the things that you see in the press are just created and planned long ago, fictitious enemies. They're enemies, but a lot of them are manufactured, and some of them aren't even real. Okay, and there's a long list, and they're almost at the end of their list. They're at the very end of their list now. Good timing.
Right.
And so there's nothing else, no more rabbits to pull out of the
Wait
hat.
one second.
You know?
I want to actually say, what was your level of clearance? Because his was cosmic top
Cosmic top,
secret.
because that's a NATO.
That's NATO.
NATO's
primarily,
highest
yeah.
clearance.
Okay.
And there are levels above that. There are
Yes.
Q clearances
And,
above that.
but you had a Q. didn't you?
My first one was a Q clearance with certain letters.
Special access
Yeah.
programs.
Yeah, but it was a Q clearance, and that was through the Department of Energy. It was Energy Research and Development Agency. Before that was the Atomic Energy Commission. And they keep changing the name, then you have to keep reprinting the paperwork and everything. I don't know why. But yeah, it was a Q clearance, and then it went to, basically from there, it varied, went up and down, from secret up into top secret, and over a period of 30 years or more. And then it ended up with top secret, SCI, and then top secret with a bunch of letters, which I still, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But it was basically...
You're not sure if you can say what...
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But
I would like to ask, because this is sort of meant to be a future talk, as it were.
yeah.
I fully understand and agree with you when you talk about the agenda of hyping up fear in order to make people more easily controllable. But let's ask the three of you, what is worth being concerned about and what is a distraction? What should we be focused on as issues for the human race in the next few years? And what just is something that is a misdirect, like the magician on the stage, that we shouldn't even be worried about, but they're trying to get us to think that way? How can you separate these things out for people? This is a really important opportunity to make a statement.
Alfred probably is best qualified to answer that.
Well, as a general answer to that, I would say that anything associated with the permanent war economy, which is an economy based on the manipulation of the dialectic of enemies, is a fundamental distraction, so that the entirety of the arms race, the entirety of the strategic balance of forces using threat of war is a distraction.
So don't fall for the war rhetoric.
Right.
Isn't it? Right.
And number two, the area that these gentlemen have worked in, I think, is the cutting edge of human consciousness moving to the next level. And that is...
I think it's you're working in the area of human consciousness, but...
Well, no, but understanding that an extraterrestrial presence is just not an abstraction, but rather it's a human race very much like our own.
It's an extension of our family.
Yeah, that lives under the surface of Mars, with whom our secret government now has contact. And so we have rights, we have inherent rights, in the same way, I think, under natural law, which will invoke that, they were expressed in the Declaration of Independence of the U.S., they were expressed in the U.S. Constitution, the Canadian Charter of Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, various documents in our terrestrial human culture, and those include rights as sovereign citizens in the universe. Therefore, if our governments are now engaged in long-term, I mean, these things go back at least 20 or 30 years, and that's just from people who I've talked to.
Treaties.
Yeah, I have to remind you that when the governments, it's not the president or the queen and down. It's agencies
above that.
Yes.
So you can't blame the governments that we normally call governments.
No, sure. But whether or not they are supra-governments, they are still subject to natural law and universal law. And they can be hauled before a court, empowered under natural law to stand trial for war crimes. But we don't want to go that direction. The direction that we want to go is to have that secret world become transparent and integrate with our world, for which we have an inherent right under natural law.
Bob, you had your hand raised. You wanted to say something.
I simply must apologize that I have an appointment I accepted for an interview in about 5 minutes. And I do want to say I'm sorry, but I will have to take leave of you illustrious personalities here for a while. You know, I have to go. I'm sorry, Carrie.
Okay, it's okay. Is there anything you want to say before you leave, Bob, about, the end of secrecy and the beginning of what's coming next? Because just as I went to get you today, you were addressing a group and you said there's going to be in the next 12 to 18 months, some things that people need to prepare for?
Well, the gentleman I was talking to is an economist and a bit of a banker. And he's been looking at the statistics, the data, and he's been watching what's been going on the world markets. And he's troubled by what he sees. And he's convinced that we're not out of the woods yet on this economic thing. And he asked me, what did I honestly think the next year or so have coming? And I said, as I said yesterday, we're in for some bad times. We have not seen the worst of it yet. And I hate to tell you that, but that's true. We have not seen the worst. The other shoe has not dropped yet. And the only thing I can tell you is that in the next year and a half, we're in for some events on a world scale that is going to make 9/11 pale in comparison, and that is sad and tragic. But to leave you with this, I must leave you on an up note for the viewers who will be seeing this. And as Tolstoy said, there is that spark that burns deep within each of us. It will not go out no matter how dark the world becomes. And I want to leave this with the people who will see this tape. There is a tomorrow. The future of this species is glorious. It is in the stars. And they've got to have hope and not be afraid. And that's all I can say in closing.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, sweetheart. It's a pleasure.
It's an honor as always.
Thank you so much, Bob.
It's always a pleasure. Read this gentleman's book.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, I've read his work, actually. I read
The Old
his
Warrior,
work
yes.
a long
Yes.
time ago. Before the organization of exopolitics was ever created, this man had the vision
Oh,
of something
he's
much
a true
greater.
visionary. He's a
Oh
true
yeah,
visionary.
absolutely.
Yes.
I don't think people even realize that this man is a true futurist, actually.
Well, if someone would be kind
And
enough...
he should be listened to in that way, because what he says today is often not understood. But I think it's always the kind of thing that years in advance, years later, they're going to say, he was one of the first, if not the first, in certain areas. It's a gift. It's your
We
gift.
need our prophets and we need our visionaries. And
That's right.
here sits one.
I just feel that we need to realize that the rest of our family has been here visiting us, and also slightly off the planet and other places, and they're interested in watching, and they would not have survived as long as they hadn't gone through this transition that we're about to go through. And so you have to realize that they're friendly and not evil, mean creatures out there like in some science fiction movies.
All of them?
Anyone that survived, generally, anyone that survived that's worthwhile, I mean, the majority, otherwise they would have destroyed themselves by now.
But you're not saying that 100% of the extraterrestrial races are friendly?
They have a different way of...
I'm not trying to scare anyone.
Some are service to self, some are service to others.
I'm just interested in-
Service to self actually means that what you're, what they're, because you haven't actually met them all, right?
No, it's impossible.
You were only exposed to a few.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about particular groups, but the thing is that in general, there was this type 0 that was talked about in type 1. They wouldn't have survived type 0 to type 1 transition if they hadn't raised their consciousness to some degree. In general, that's the case. There may have been some exceptions, but they're such a minority that
well, actually, our government their liaison is often with the service to self.
Yeah, that's right.
And the evil forces on this planet aren't doing it all on their own. They didn't think up all this stuff on their own.
Well, actually, humanity isn't doing it all on their own. They're
Got their own lords
being
and
pushed and prodded by some unseen forces and unseen beings. It may be a philosophical difference, or
it's a philosophical difference. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's-
I mean, by recognizing their existence, I'm not giving them power. I'm just saying we've got to tell the truth here. There is evil out there in the universe.
Well-
It's not just, it doesn't just stop at the Illuminati.
there's darkness, but darkness is, for me, I view it as ignorance, or
Ultimately,
it's
of course,
the
that's right.
absence of light. It's not an opposing force. Ultimately, there's light, and then there's no light,
I'm
or
just talking-
interference.
I'm just talking about functionality.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we
I'm talking
can,
about functionality.
I think actually even you could talk about, Alfred, what we've been talking about off camera a little bit in terms of there is investigation at the moment going into some of the relationships that are going on behind the scenes with various races. And
Yes,
You know what I mean?
and sure. I mean, just to keep it down to specific data points, we know what Arthur has said here, that he's been to Mars. We also have another very credible whistleblower who we've talked about, who in 1980 went to Mars twice.
This is Andrew Bijaga.
Yes,
Yeah.
in the company of a CIA officer, Courtney Hunt, just to put that on the record, from through a Mars jump room, a teleportation jump room, from El Segundo, California, to one of the sort of bunker type bases. Right under the surface of Mars, and who walked around on the surface of Mars, and who in 1971, in the company of his father, who was a CIA contract officer type, met 3 Martian astronauts who were on a liaison and coordination visit at Curtiss Wright Air Force Base. And so we know that from at least 1971, there's been a coordinating and liaison type function or relationship between the Martians and the U.S. government. Well, from what I've read, the Martian civilization is a positive, ethical civilization. So to counteract, our strategy should be, as citizens, to encourage an open strategic alliance between our culture, our open culture, and the Martian culture, and to make that available immediately at the highest level, which is a presidential acknowledgement of the existence and relationship with the civilization on Mars.
And that's one of the founding principles of exopolitics.
Exactly.
yeah, but I would like to say that you are nodding, so you're saying, you're kind of recognizing some of the testimony
Yes,
that he's
I've never
referring to.
heard of this until now, this person or anything. And it's like, oh, no, someone else,
There's another one, yeah.
And
Yes.
it sounds like a very similar kind of work, too. Very similar.
But I
Yeah.
would like to say, and this is, I'm throwing this out here, I am familiar because I've had some personal contact with some, what I know of as Anunnaki, and that there are some, some positive Anunnaki, and there are some more negatively oriented, just like there are humans, they're good and bad. There are different Anunnaki, and I have to say that they're interacting with individuals, because I have had some interaction. They have made their presence known to me, and I know Bob isn't here to actually talk about this, but Bob has had his own interaction with Anunnaki that he has talked about with us, and I know you've met them.
The Anunnaki are the exception that I was talking about, but I really didn't have any time to even really communicate, because it's always at a table in a room, and it's just, that wasn't my function to get to know everyone intimately,
Right.
Yeah, but it was similar to what you were talking about, liaison and things like that.
But the table you're talking about is a table surrounded by humans not from this planet, right?
Yeah, they look like humans in general. Yes.
And this took place at times also on Mars, right?
That's where they all took place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
For
did you ever meet
For
with
me.
these people here? Because as Bob was saying,
No.
he met with some
No.
a scientist was
Not
working.
here.
I see.
I just want to jump in before the end of the tape to say that we've got our own
I'm
communication.
sorry, I made a mistake. Did I ever meet with them? When I was not working, yes. But that's another story.
It's
Long time ago.
It's another interview
Oh,
with you.
right. Okay.
I just want to say on record that the person who Alfred Webre is talking about is Andy Vajago. We've been in touch with him for 18 months. We haven't met him personally, but I personally spoke with him 18 months ago, 4 hours continuously, which is one of the more extraordinary conversations I've had in my life. I've had quite a lot of extraordinary conversations now.
And I lasted about 2 hours. I couldn't last the whole time, I have to be honest.
And as far as we are able to determine, and I'm just speaking epistemologically here, we fully support Andy's story and we fully support his own intention in order to release his story to the world, and he's only told a tiny part of it so far. And what's really interesting here is that this dovetails fully with Arthur's personal experience, to do with time travel, to do with wormholes, to do with the relationship with activity on Mars, and a whole complexity here that's very hard to swallow, but it's extremely important to understand. And I just wanted to add our own support to that, and this is something else that we'll pick up and roll with later because it's way beyond the scope of this conversation.
Okay, but I had a conversation today with one of our whistleblowers, and he actually he was talking about the amount of radiation on Mars and questioning.
No, he wasn't. He was talking about the radiation in the Van Allen belts.
No, he actually also talked about the radiation on Mars, and I was asking him about that, and I said that the bases were underground. Is there radiation on Mars in excess of what we have, for example, here on Earth?
Because of what I was doing there, I wasn't even focused on thinking about those things. I simply was going there for an hour, it sounds strange, for an hour meeting, and then I'd leave and come here. And so, for me, because of the way my life's been like this forever, it's nothing was unusual. I didn't even think about things like that, whether there's a radiation or not. Those things were just handled by the way the system was set up there, or is set up, or will be set up. I don't even know what time period it is now. That's another subject. But
well, you had physiological reaction to having gone through that process, isn't it?
Yes,
right?
yeah. That's another thing because of the kind of like jet lag kind of thing. There was medicine that I was taking that when I quit, I actually forgot about because everything happened so suddenly when I quit that it was not available any longer. But that's another subject again.
All stuff to be, earlier at the start of this conversation, Arthur made a joke and said that he ran away. This is not true, and I didn't want you I didn't want that to be misunderstood. It was after a disagreement at work. You basically handed in your notice.
It was kind of it was not even a disagreement. It was
a conflict.
It was just I got very tired because things were becoming more and more restricted in my life to the point of where I could no longer even call my friends or email my friends, and instead of just trying to sit it out and go through all the massive paperwork and things and waiting, I just decided, I would make the decision instead.
Yeah. But basically, it was a relatively sudden
Very
departure,
sudden, very sudden.
rather than being gradually rooted out, and that involved you suddenly not taking any more a particular medication.
Which I forgot about because I just, I literally left everything behind in my home and just went to another country.
But what I'm stating here is that the medication that you took was something called Lorenzil, which, if you suddenly withdraw from that, that the effects that Lorenzil is designed to ameliorate is something that's called transdimensional disorder.
Well, this is what I understand from someone else that I didn't know about. So
okay, and this is all got to. I mean, this is another thing that's beyond the scope of this conversation, it's got to do with the zero-time reference and things that Peter Moon's talked about in his first Montauk books and so on and so forth. But the body gets very disoriented when it's going through jump gates or jump rooms or whatever it is you want to call these things. And there's a certain medication that one has to take in order to ameliorate that. If you suddenly withdraw from that, then you're in big trouble. And this is one of the things that you're up against.
Right, and I think that at another point we can talk in more depth about that. But for the purposes of this conversation, to kind of return to we're really talking about the future of the humanity and our interaction with, well, certainly Anunnaki on Mars. But we had a statement that was made which said, it's been said to us by Robert Dean and also some other whistleblowers, that the Anunnaki are running things from behind the scenes here on Earth. And I wonder if you, Alfred, would address that at all.
Or trying to.
Right. Well, certainly, I've heard that there are various. That is to take a model of how decisions are made here on Earth. There are various models which have some evidence for them. One model is a more drastic model than the Anunnaki model, and that involves whether or not this is a true model or is a model based on disinformation. Involves the existence of a reptilian race in the fourth density, that is one more density up from us. They have more control over time, and that density has been behind the phenomenon of alien abductions. Now, there are researchers like Dr. Stephen Greer who believe that all abductions, the Roper poll shows that about 2% of the U.S. population, or about 6 million people, have been abducted, which is a substantial number of people. And there are researchers like Dr. Stephen Greer who believes that all of the abductions are psyops and are essentially done by elements of the U.S. government, a psychological warfare both against the human population and against the ethical extraterrestrial population to stigmatize them. Whether or not that's true or not, there's certainly evidence that both small gray-looking beings and reptilian beings have been engaged in extraterrestrial abductions of this substantial number of people with a high strangeness thing. So, and these have been with secret contracts. So,
but the fourth dimensional aspect, which is the interdimensional quality of this interaction and the fact of these beings, is a little different, I would say, than what we interact with in terms of the Anunnaki.
Yes,
in theory, anyway.
This is a different sort.
We've got 1 second
of interaction.
We've got to stop.
How much? What do we got? 1 minute. Okay. Given then let's do some sort of a summation, and like you to handle that if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that we've established that the release of secrecy, we know empirically from yesterday, is a great consciousness raising event, and it will be the deconstruction of secrecy with these great cosmic cycles that will mediate a positive human future.
That's a natural,
almost natural event.
Yeah.
Arthur, Alfred, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We'll continue this conversation later. And we have to come to an end here because we've got no more digits. And Kerry, thank you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been a fun but enlightening event we've got going here, and we're going to continue this conversation for years to come, I'm sure.